Welcome to Super Talk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. Because, as I say every week, we are the capital of the outdoors in America, and we want to stay that. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful Super Talk Mississippi Radio Network, or on Super Talk TV at C Spire TV. Some of you might be watching the show on YouTube or Facebook, or listening on your favorite podcast. It's February the 12th. 2024. Hey, you know what? If there's a clarion call for this show, and really all of us as outdoorsmen and women, it's this quote from John Audubon. A true conservationist is a man who knows that the world is not given by his fathers, but borrowed from his children. Think about that. That's a powerful quote that talks about legacy. By the way, if you don't hunt or fish, what I'm about to talk about today still is very significant to you. You think about it, over half of Mississippians live in rural areas, and hunting and fishing are vital to the small towns across this state. So many local businesses, whether it be hardware stores or restaurants or donut shops or gas stations or equipment and ATV companies, seed companies like my friend Spike Crawford, or deer processing like my friends at BB's in Greenwood, and so many others like them, are part of the people who rely on the economic engine that is created by our outdoors enjoyment. The outdoor industry in Mississippi is worth billions of dollars. So what I want to do today is reflect for a minute or two about the importance of the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. Unfortunately, too often the work of this commission goes unnoticed. They do good work. I'll put that out there, right out there and in front. But people don't pay attention enough to the decisions and actions they make that sometimes are in a vacuum. And we're going to talk about that today. I'm going to do my part as we go forward to assure that wildlife policies, as I said last week, are built on integrity and fairness and good science and the common good. When decisions are made in a vacuum without public input, or in back rooms, out of the public eye, or with political favoritism, ultimately, I think Mississippi loses. I think you would agree with that as well. So let's take a step back and look at the structure of the commission. It's a 5-member board appointed by the governor, and the executive director of the department is recommended by the commission and then appointed by the governor. Incidentally, the law doesn't require commission members have any kind of a degree or experience focused on wildlife management or conservation. That, my friend, right off the bat is a major issue for sure. So who's on the commission? Bill Kosser is the chairman. Scott Cookwood, who's a publisher in the Mississippi Delta, is vice chairman. Gary Rhodes, he's incidentally the mayor of Flowood. And let's see, Billy Munger, and then Leonard Bentz. I've referred to Leonard Bentz as sort of the anti-science member of the commission. He was recently reappointed by Governor Reeves, though he has not yet been confirmed. We're going to be talking more about that confirmation process in the near future. It takes 3 votes on the commission to change Mississippi's outdoor world. Hunting seasons, bag limits, how the department spends money, how the state manages wildlife, how we manage wildlife diseases, and on and on and on. 3 votes. 3 votes can change the course of history and impact positively or negatively every single Mississippian in the process. It's that significant. Now, let's talk about last week's news that a deer tested positive for chronic wasting disease in Claiborne County. That actually provides a significant teaching moment about how this commission too often makes decisions in a vacuum. This is just one compelling example. There are many others, unfortunately. So here is some background. Chronic wasting disease, most hunters understand this. It's a 100% fatal disease for white-tailed deer. It was found in Mississippi in January 2018. It was actually a free-ranging 4.5-year-old buck that died about 8 miles north of Vicksburg in extreme Issaquah County. The Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks implemented its CWD response plan, and supplemental feeding was immediately banned in Claiborne, Hinds, Issaquah, Sharkey, Warren, and Yazoo counties, along with other measures. It's important to point out that a deer can have this disease for 2 years without showing symptoms. There's no cure. Containment of this disease is the only way to limit its spread. That's the only tool we have in our toolbox. Where this disease takes hold, it virtually wipes out all older class deer. Ask your friends in Benton County about their experience. I'll actually have a landowner from Benton County on an upcoming show. But let me give you a personal perspective on this. I killed a 5.5-year-old 160-inch free-ranging buck this past year. It was my biggest deer ever. Quality deer management really works. We had 3 years of experience with this deer. I want your and my grandkids to have that same opportunity. That dream will die if we fail to act more aggressively to address CWD in Mississippi. So a lot has transpired since 2018. As of last week, 315 positives have been found across the state. Think about the number of deer that have been killed and found dead that have not been tested. So the chances are high that the prevalence of the disease is much greater than we know. Many experts agree this disease is among the greatest threats to white-tailed deer hunting in America. Robbie Kroger of Blood Origin said on my show last year that CWD could be the anchor that sinks hunting in the future. I posted the part of the show where Robbie discusses this on the SuperTalk Outdoors Facebook page if you want to see it. He especially warned us not to legalize the sale and transfer of white-tailed deer in Mississippi, given the clear evidence from other states. As I've said repeatedly on the show, that this enables the spread of CWD. We can't allow that. So CWD is a clear and present danger in Mississippi. Our wildlife commissioners have been briefed continuously about this. So when you compare their actions to the best practices of other states, it's not hard to conclude that when it comes to CWD, our commission at times is asleep at the wheel when it comes to this issue. Okay, this leads me back to Claiborne County. Along the way, positive test results were showing up on the Louisiana side of the river from Claiborne County. Deer tracking studies have shown us that deer, especially bucks, can travel a long distance. What those collared deer have taught us has not only been fascinating to us as hunters, but it's also provided crucial data to help us understand the need to think carefully and smartly about how we manage CWD from a geographic perspective. The deer tracking studies showed us something that hunters and biologists already knew, that deer swim across the river. So at the November 2022 commission meeting, a little over a year ago, the Wildlife Commission took Claiborne County out of the CWD zone. Here's what happened. Commissioner Leonard Anti-Science Bentz made a motion making the center of the channel of the Mississippi River the western boundary. That meant that if there was a positive test on the Louisiana or Arkansas side, the adjacent Mississippi County would not be added to the CWD zone against deer program recommendations. And of course, in spite of concrete evidence that deer swam the river. That decision was arbitrary, and it placed Claiborne County at greater risk of spreading the disease. There was no public input. Their decision ignored science and the compelling and devastating evidence coming out of other Mississippi counties with high prevalence of the disease, especially Benton County. But the voice of reason on the commission, Commissioner Billy Munger, tried. He made a really good argument as to why we better take CWD seriously. His arguments were science-based. But Bentz, Scott Coopwood, and Gary Rhodes, who incidentally seconded Bentz's motion, voted for the motion. Chairman Koster didn't vote. Of course, Billy Munger voted against it. The motion passed and Claiborne County was removed from the CWD zone. In two commission meetings after that, Ducks Unlimited Ed Penny, a significant conservation leader in the state and who has been on this show many times, spoke at commission meetings urging the public to pay attention and asking, and by the way, he spoke as a public citizen and a landowner from Claiborne County, asking the commission to be more responsible regarding CWD. The commission did nothing to address his concerns. Fast forward, CWD prions, these are actually the infectious agents that cause CWD, were detected in a deer scrape this past summer in Claiborne County. Crickets from the commission. And now a deer tested positive in Claiborne County. That has been reported as of last week. We've posted a short video from the November 2022 commission meeting at the SuperTalk Outdoor Facebook page if you want to see it for yourself. In short, this Wildlife Commission continues to respond too slowly to the clear and present danger to Mississippi whitetail hunting and our hunting economy. This matters to all Mississippians, but it's important not that they made a decision that we might disagree with. What's important is that they made a decision in a vacuum without any public input. When we come back on the other side, I want to share kind of a message to Governor Reeves. I have a very special message for Governor Reeves. We're also going to be joined on the other side by Representative Timmy Ladner. He's actually in his car en route to Jackson as we speak. And let me end this segment last time with a quote from John Audubon. A true conservationist is a man who knows the world is not given by his fathers, but borrowed for his children. We'll see you when we get back on the other side. Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I appreciate you joining us, whether it be on SuperTalk TV, on SuperTalk Radio, YouTube, Facebook, your favorite podcast. We've tried to be there any way you want to join us, and the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi Media is a multimedia company, and I'm thrilled to have this show associated with it. That is for sure. Hey, listen, before we went to break, I was talking to you about how too often the commission makes decisions in a vacuum without public input. And this is really important. I think the CWD case in Claiborne County, as I said, is a teaching moment. But it's not the only teaching moment that I could present to you. Maybe over the course of the next few shows, I'll give you some more examples. But for now, this is a good one. You know, this commission belongs to the governor of the state of Mississippi. The governor appoints people. This particular commission, so far, Governor Reeves has had 2 appointments. But I've got actually a direct message to the governor. And so let me speak directly to the governor. You know, Governor, you've got an extremely important role in this state to help right this ship. You're going to go down in history as one of the most significant economic development governors in our state's history. Everyone knows that you're a numbers guy. And from an outdoors perspective, you've been extremely supportive of the Foundation for Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks through things like the Governor's Hunt. We recently saw a show on PBS illuminating that, which has actually resulted in millions of dollars raised for conservation efforts across the state. You enjoy the outdoors. You understand what outdoors means to the state. So I urge you to study the science. In this particular case, study the science around CWD. Sit down one-on-one with Deer Program Manager William McKinley. I really encourage you to do that one-on-one and study the actions of this commission. I know you've been busy closing million-dollar deals for the state, and I congratulate you for that. Man, that is unbelievable, the success that we've had there. But please pay closer attention to the existing billion-dollar industry, our outdoors industry. Mississippi's outdoor economy and the future of deer hunting in Mississippi is really at stake here. You are a governor who can passionately protect Mississippi's wildlife legacy and our outdoor economy. I urge you. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears and move over to my friend, Representative Timmy Ladner, who is a member of the House of Representatives. He's a Republican from Poplarville and someone I've enjoyed getting to know better. Without any further ado, let me welcome Timmy Ladner to SuperTalk Outdoors. How you doing, Timmy?
Very good. Thank you. Good to be on with you.
It's good to be on with you, too. For the YouTube and Facebook and SuperTalk TV audience, you can see that we don't have a video. He's actually in his car en route to the legislative session as we speak, something legislators do from across the state. Many of them are listening to this show as we speak. So anyway, I appreciate you joining us, Timmy. It's been great getting to know you better. But you really do love the outdoors, don't you, my friend?
I really do. Hunt, fish as much as I possibly can. I always have. Both my kids do. We take several trips to the Delta every year hunting and fishing. We love it, and we want to protect the sport. You know, I also do real estate when I'm not in Jackson, and we had a discussion one day with a guy about some issues that we were doing a subdivision, and I reminded him, you know, sportsmen are the best conservationists and the number one conservationists on earth, because when we run out of wildlife and fish, we don't have anything to do. So that's where I stand.
Hey, you heard that John Audubon quote. I think it describes really well what this show is all about. It describes your passion. But the work that we're doing is generational work. I think about the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, where we had bipartisan support last year. I mean, what a generational piece of legislation. But John Audubon hit it squarely on the head when he said a true conservationist is a man who knows the world is not given by his fathers, but borrowed from his children. Boy, that's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That is absolutely correct.
So look, you're involved in a legislative session. You've been up there for a number of years. You've had a lot of passions along the way. How has it been for you? How have you enjoyed your time in the legislature?
I've really enjoyed it. I've always said that, government is of the people, by the people, for the people. And that's what got me there. I thought I could make a difference somewhere along the way. And if I end up making a difference, I'm not looking for a legacy. I'm not looking to be famous, but I want to make a difference. I represent about 25,000 people across the state or across my district. And, I want to make a difference for those folks and our children and grandchildren who are coming behind us.
Hey, listen, when I said this about the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, it took us a couple of years to get it, but we were able to get it done. The matching funds that we hoped for has come to fruition. The Board of Trustees who are analyzing the applications and putting in motion approvals that engage a lot of matching funds. We've been able to turn $1 into almost $4. But you think about the body of the legislative body, the Republicans and Democrats that are there. On the national stage, there's always a lot of polarization, and we can't seem to get on the same page. But in Mississippi, when we talk about the outdoors in Mississippi, we can usually create bipartisan efforts around things like the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund because there's a lot of passion about the outdoors there, isn't there?
A lot of passion, and not only that, there's a lot of similarities between the parties in Mississippi and the folks. The folks have the same interests, whether they're Democrat or Republican. So it's always worked out really well.
Yeah, I've said this many times on the show, but it's the one time when we can set our political differences aside, and Republicans and Democrats and others can go hunt together and enjoy being together. And so it's really an opportunity to sort of bring us all together. So Timmy, you heard what I said at the beginning of the show, that when you have a 5-member commission, when 3 votes, and you don't have qualifications, I might add, 3 votes can change the course of history as it relates to our conservation efforts for the state. They can literally enact changes with 3 votes that could affect our kids and our kids' kids. We don't take that seriously enough. We don't focus enough on that, do we?
We don't, and that's been one of my big debates since I've been here in the 12 years I'm here, is that I've argued against. There's a clause in all of their stuff that says, we give the authority for them to promulgate and enforce regulation, and I understand that to a certain point, but at the same time, I've made this statement several times that if I want to pass a bill on my end of the building in the House of Representatives, I have to have 62 votes to get that done. Then I've got to lobby it in the Senate and try to get 27 votes over there. Well, these guys are basically, they had the ability to change state law and call it a regulation with 3 votes. And I've always had somewhat of a problem with that. I've always argued against that. And that's, the bill I've got presented right now, at least will say, we want 9 of those guys to be representative of the people of Mississippi, and we want 4 of them to have an education or a background in the industry. So that's kind of where that bill came from.
Hey, we're going to talk about the bill here in just a second. What got my attention when I first started SuperTalk Outdoors, we got through the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund. And then I started talking about the sale and transfer of white-tailed deer. And the amount of pressure that started to come back to me to not talk about that issue. What I learned about the kind of backroom deals that were being made around that, and I'm not going to talk about that issue now, but I just use it as an example to say, you don't think special interests don't know that all they need is 3 votes to get what they want? You don't think special interests don't know that? And that's not good for our state when special interests can control a particular topic, whatever it might be. and push things that are ultimately not good for Mississippi. And we've really got to be more focused on changing that, don't we?
We absolutely do. And with some work and effort, hopefully we will.
So let's focus for just a second. This is not the first time the legislature has talked about changing the makeup and qualifications of the commission, is it? It
is not. This is my first attempt at it, but it's been talked about several years.
And what usually stops it?
Well, I've talked to the governor's office about it, and I agree with the governor. You know, we all on our side of the aisle, Republicans that is, have campaigned on smaller government, less taxes, things like that. And one of their issues is that they feel like this bill is growing government. I understand that. I totally do, and I'm not for growing government that much either. But that seems to be the sticking point with it right now. You know, I would rather some education background or some experience in the field be on that commission. So we will work on going that route next.
Hey, what we're going to do is we continue our conversation with Representative Timmy Ladner. When we come back on the other side, we're going to specifically discuss his bill. What is his bill? What's the number on it? Where is it in the process? What kind of support does it look like he's getting for it? You know, changes need to be made. Qualifications, we need to make it so that it requires more than 3 votes to change the course of history for wildlife in the state. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Listen, I promise we're going to talk about outdoor enjoyment. Next week, we'll get somebody on the show. We'll give you an update about what's happening in the legislature, but we'll also bring a guest in and remind you how special outdoor enjoyment in this state is. You don't, not that you need that reminder, but I'm pleased to be joined by Representative Timmy Ladner. He's a Republican from Poplarville. And he's really passionate about the outdoors. He's got a bill that's in front of the legislature. I'll get him to tell you about specifically what the bill does. And then for people who don't know how the legislative process works, what I'm going to ask Timmy Ladner to do is actually talk about the bill gets written and then it gets introduced. What's the process it goes through? And then we'll come back and say, okay, now exactly where is this bill? So, Timmy, why don't you kind of, first of all, start with a review of what your bill does?
Well, what my bill does is it will add 4 members to the commission, making the commission a 9-member commission. 4 of those members will have to be education or history or experience background. They will have to have an education in wildlife biology, wildlife studies, or some kind of wildlife related field. Or they had to have an experience of being a wildlife manager or something of that nature.
Like 10 years, right? 10 years.
Right. 10 years experience in those fields. And so I'm thinking that education or experience in their background will help the commission make better decisions about how to manage our deer herd and all other hunting activities as far as that's concerned.
So, okay, and it also will increase when you increase the number to 9. It makes it so that you can't change the course of history with just 3 votes. That's important, isn't it?
Very important. Very important. That will move the number of votes to 5 to get anything passed, and I believe that helps things immensely because I just don't know that a 5-man commission is in our best interest.
Hey, so Timmy, let's do this real quick. You heard what I talked about. Outdoors enjoyment in the state is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We don't tend to think of it being the economic engine that it is. So when decisions are made by the current commission and by past commissions, we tend to look at each decision as sort of just being. A lot of times we don't even know the decisions they're making. A lot of times it's out of sight, out of mind. But we don't tend to relate it back to their responsibilities to make sure we're protecting that outdoors economy. But it is super significant. And I wonder why we don't talk about it in those terms enough.
Well, I sent some stats out last week to some folks. The hunting and fishing industry in Mississippi is about 1.93 billion, and that's the economic impact on the state. You know, the Mississippi Hunting Dog Association has done fox hunts and things in their pens down here and raised money for children who are sick or had cancer or whatever. And I see the checks these guys write to these families, and I see the impact they have on folks who are really down. And we need to spread that word more, and we need to make it known.
We definitely need to make it known. Okay, so the bill gets written and then it gets filed. Talk us through the process.
Well, I'll have an idea about a bill, or anybody in the legislature, or anybody in the public. I've written bills by request before, but we'll get an idea. I had this idea to write this bill to add 4 people to the commission. I go sit down with my legal staff. We have a legal staff in the House of Representatives. We have one in the Senate. And I said, here's what I want my bill to do. I want to add 4 commissioners. I want them to be educated or have some work-related experience. So my legal staff drafts the bill. I read over it, make sure everything's kosher that I like. We can make changes to it at any time. Then we have a box in the House of Representatives. It's locked. No one knows what's in it until the Speaker opens it. We drop a bill in there. It goes into the Speaker's office. Speaker will read over it and see which committee that needs to take that bill up and needs to consider that bill. So, this bill here, he's sent to Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And what a lot of people need to know is, once I drop that bill in that box and the Speaker refers it to that committee, that bill no longer belongs to me. It belongs to that committee. That committee can do whatever they want with it. They can change it. They can take all of my language out of it, put all of their language in it. It's called a strike all amendment to do that. But they will consider it in a committee meeting at some point and decide what they're going to do with it. If it passes out of that committee, I think the Wildlife Committee is 17 members maybe. And, if they get a majority vote in the committee, it will move on to the floor of the House. And once it goes there, they will get up, present it on the floor. We will vote on it. If we pass it, then it goes to the Senate and goes all through that process again. The lieutenant governor will refer it to a committee, most likely Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. It'll go to their committee. It'll belong to that committee. Then they can do whatever they want with it. They can change it in any way. And if they pass it with changes, it comes back to us. We either approve those changes or we don't approve them. And if we don't approve them, then it will go to conference. Once it makes it to conference, there'll be 3 senators, 3 House members who will sit down in a room and they will decide, well, we can take this language out or we can add this language to it. They can completely change it. And then we'll get to see a conference report. It'll come back to the originating chamber. That bill would have originated in the House. It'll come back to the House first, and we will either pass it or let it die on the calendar or whatever the case may be. And if we pass it, it'll go back to the Senate. If they pass it, then it'll go to the governor.
So Timmy, this is actually, thank you very much for reminding our listeners the way the process works. So it takes a lot to get a bill through. Someone once said to me, as a publisher of a newspaper, early in my career, they said, the democratic process is slow for a reason. You don't want bills getting passed that aren't going to be good bills. And certainly that happens, but that's why the legislative process is so important. You can go back in and tweak bills and whatever. Oftentimes, like the Outdoor Stewardship Trust Fund, oftentimes bills don't make it the first year. It takes, you talked about the kind of aligning that you have to do. But the process can be slow and frustrating, and changes can get made that you don't like. But that's what, your legislative body, the House of Representatives, is there as the voice for the people. And the opportunity for the voices to be heard during the legislative process is really important. So it goes slow for a reason, doesn't it, Timmy?
It absolutely does. And I tell people every time I speak anywhere, I tell folks the Mississippi Constitution is designed and set up to automatically kill bills. And that's a good process and a good thing, because we don't see as many of those bills as we might have or would. So, the process is really great. It's frustrating at times, but all in all, it's a good process.
So the House Committee on Wildlife, the chairman is Bill Kincaid. I have a lot of respect for Bill Kincaid, incidentally. I think he is a man who cares deeply about conservation efforts in our state. So one other quick point. So you talked about the legislative process and all these sort of hoops that a bill has to go through, lots of opportunities to kill it and change it. What you didn't mention, though, let's take in the case of this particular bill, or the current process. Let's look at the current process. There are some special interests that like the fact that 3 votes can change the course of history. So some of those special interests actually have lobbyists who work in the legislature. And so the moment they get wind of this bill, they start working hard to either change the language or kill the bill. And by the way, I don't blame them for this. This is the way the process works. But the reality is that for some people, just getting 3 votes aligned is a really good thing for whatever their interest is. And increasing that vote from 3 to 5 on the commission that your bill does makes it more cumbersome for them, makes it harder for them to align the votes in their favor. That's a big part of the legislative process, isn't it, Timmy?
Sure is. And I don't ever fault the lobbyists. I mean, these guys are getting paid, to take care of their clients and to move their clients' interests along. I never hold that against any lobbyist. I do, however, like you said, I do have a problem sometimes with 3 votes taking care of some things that, that most sportsmen don't think's a good thing. And I've heard from hundreds of guys. I've got tons of emails, text messages, people saying, thank you for this bill. We're sportsmen and we don't have an interest in this other than going out and hunting.
Yeah, it's not on their radar screen. The average outdoorsman or woman, it's not on their radar screen till it directly impacts them. And then it gets on their radar screen. But when we should be having sort of a general conversation about the whole process all the time, because I think there are probably a lot of decisions that are made that may not necessarily impact them today, but might impact their kids and their kids' kids. And that's where we've got to do a better job of communicating about that. I can assure you that. Hey, when we come back on the other side for the final segment, we'll continue our conversation with Timmy Ladner from Poplarville. He's a Republican from Poplarville in the House of Representatives, and we'll talk about sort of where this bill is now and where it might go. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Having a detailed conversation today about the makeup of the commission, a specific bill that Timmy Ladner, a Republican representative from Poplarville, has introduced. But at the end of the day, I want to kind of harp on these terms that I used last week and then I used again today. What we're trying to do, what I think I'm certainly in favor of this bill, and I think there's a growing number of others that are in favor of this bill for all the reasons that we've talked about. But what we're trying to do is build integrity and fairness and good science and the common good into the process. We cannot make decisions in a vacuum without public input. We can't. The example I gave of CWD in Claiborne is just one example like that. But we've got to do a better job of what I refer to as protecting the public trust as it relates to Mississippi's wildlife conservation efforts. We have to do a better job at that. And this applies to everybody in the state, whether you hunt or fish or just enjoy the outdoors economy. This is really important. So I don't think that I can overstate how important your bill is, Timmy. I really can't. It's that important. And I'm just curious, okay, you've introduced it. It's been referred. You've gotten some pushback from the governor's office. He certainly could eventually veto it if he wants. But how does the governor not wanting to increase the number from 5 to 9, how does that get involved in the process internally in the legislature about how people view this bill?
Well, I don't think it has any effect on how people view it who are for the bill or who would like to see it passed. And let me touch on one other thing before I move on with that. We live in a day and age now where everybody has a smartphone in their hand. It's easy to find us. It's really easy to get in touch with us. So public comment is out there every second of every day. And I hear it all day, every day. I know most other folks in the legislature do. So, I take that to heart. I work for the folks in my district, and whatever they say, I listen to. I'll tell anybody the vote I cast every day belongs to the 25,000 people in my district. I do what I think they expect me to do. So, with that being said, the governor has a lot of influence with a lot of folks in the legislature, and I'm good with that. I understand that. He's a friend of mine, so he can move me and sway me on some issues. This is an issue, though, I think we really need to take a close look at, because it's going to affect our children, grandchildren, and their children and grandchildren. And, hunting is, we said it a few minutes ago, it's a $1.9 billion industry in the state. And not only that, it's a fun pastime. Hunting and fishing is vital in my district. Everybody does it.
It is. It is. I listen. So what are you hearing from the committee?
The only thing I've heard from a couple members of the committee is the governor is pushing back on it because it expands government, and they're looking at most likely not taking the bill through committee. So, now I'm looking at other options.
Yeah. Well, let me urge the committee to focus less on where the pushback might be at this stage of the game politically, and just focus on what's in the best interest of Mississippi's wildlife legacy, your kids and your kids' kids. We've got to ramp this conversation up. We've got to solve an existing problem, and if we don't, we're just kicking that can down the road. And there'll be other examples in the future that we'll be able to cite because we didn't act. But let me say this, Timmy, that I really urge people to call their legislators. And I would also urge them to follow SuperTalk Outdoors on their Facebook page. And if they don't have Facebook, they can go to SuperTalk Mississippi YouTube page and get a copy of this show and share it with their friends. I encourage them to come back here every single Monday at noon and learn more about, especially during the legislative session, about what's going on. Because at the end of the day, if we don't ignite a fire around the issues that unite us as outdoorsmen and outdoors women, then if we can't do that, then we're not going to really make change happen. Accountability and transparency in the state's wildlife conservation efforts is critical. So I would really urge our listeners to spread the word. We can't do this alone, can we, Timmy? We need help from everyone. We got to start a movement around these kinds of things. If we don't, we won't pay closer attention going forward. And at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what will our kids and our kids' kids say of us if we don't act? But we can't do this alone, can we, Timmy?
We cannot. We need everyone who loves outdoors needs to be involved and needs to be given their input.
Listen, there's a lot more that I don't say. I talked to you last week about the efforts to silence my voice. Obviously that failed. I don't make it about me, so I don't harp on that. There have been efforts to silence other people's voices. Maybe one day I'll talk more about that. But instead of addressing the challenges that we discuss, instead of addressing those challenges, they seek to silence voices. That's not a good way to run the conservation efforts in our state. It really isn't. And so we're going to be talking more about it here on SuperTalk Outdoors as we go forward, especially during this legislative session. Representative Timmy Ladner, thank you for joining us on your drive up to Jackson. We really appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you. Good to be on, and hope to do it again.
You bet. We'll see you next week. Have a great day, and always stay safe when you're in the outdoors. Don't drop your guard. Stay safe. God bless you, and we'll see you next week.